Welcome, welcome to Catching Up with Conception, where I, Audra Smith, fertility coach, host interviews about all things fertility. Nothing is off limits, and we are here for radical acceptance of the good, the bad, and everything in between in the world of fertility. Now, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. It may not seem like much, but engaging with the content helps so much. Also, if you connect with this content, please reach out so we can help you and meet you wherever you're at. Hi there. Today we've got Morgan Henry Kerr, our Queer TTC Doula. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Yes, I am Morgan, and I am a queer mom, and I also am a queer doula, working with folks who want to be parents in a myriad of ways. But I just found that having my own lived experience of trying to conceive 14 unsuccessful times and then becoming the non-bio parent, and now in the work that I've decided to do, I've found that there's like a real opportunity to deeply support folks during that trying to conceive time, during the becoming phase of becoming a parent. It seems that, like, as I've gotten to know more people in the birthing space, there's a lot of folks working in labor and postpartum as a doula, but I haven't really seen anything that really specifically supports folks who are navigating this part of the process, which is just a lot. And there's a lot of opportunity there to support folks in a way that they're not getting support otherwise. It's a totally foreign territory. It's very hard to navigate. It's a totally new language that you have to sort of learn as you go. And being queer just lends itself to adding this whole other layer to trying to conceive, because, no one's, like I would say, no one's getting knocked out by accident. No one's like having a night of fireball and bad decisions and getting pregnant. Like, all of this is like very much planned and very much scheduled, and very much there's a ton of work that goes into becoming a parent as a queer person, and a queer person being in the world. There's a lot of layers to that, and a lot of things that can be supported, unpacked, healed, in addition to just the process of actually trying to make a person in your body, which in itself is enough of a feat. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And even going through this, I don't want people to think that Fireball can't be included.
Yeah, right. It's definitely a snark comment for sure. Because when you feel like everyone else but you is getting pregnant. When you're looking at like straight folks that are getting pregnant very easily, or saying, oh, we just
it just happened.
We just kind of decided to go off birth control and not use condoms and just gotta see what happens. And you're over here spending 20 G's trying to make one person for 2.5 years,
Yes. Or on Gilmore Girls, I just saw a thing. Gilmore Girls, Lane Kim goes off on her honeymoon, her very first time. Boom, she has twins.
So easy. Right? Twins. God. Okay.
Well, yeah.
That's part of what's wrong with this. Yeah.
Yes, twins are terrifying. They're wonderful. They're terrifying. Yeah. Now, do you work specifically with queer folks trying to have babies, or do you focus more on queer folks struggling with infertility trying to have babies, or where do you kind of fall?
No, my focus is to work with queer folks who are trying to get pregnant. The thing is for us, we're often tossed into the infertility camp because it's like they don't know like what else to do with us. Mm-hmm. And so it's easier to act like we're infertile, but we're not. We just don't have sperm readily available to us and living in our household. So that's really the only thing. And so, like, obviously there are folks who have various things going on that impact their fertility, but for the majority of us, that's not the case. We're just having to use artificial insemination or IUIs to get pregnant. And so I'm just wanting to help and support and be sort of someone who tends to queer families that want to build their families by getting pregnant. There could be a level of other stuff that happens down the road once they get into the process, but like that's the audience, the folks that the community that I want to support aren't currently infertile now.
Gotcha. So you work with like helping them find sperm banks and find donations if that is like a needed thing? Because I say like, so I work on the infertile side, right? That is, I hesitate to say that's my jam, right? But it is like, that's my niche and where I feel really passionate helping people.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that I am wanting to learn more about, and I'm going to have you talk about that here in a second, is how to support queer family planning, because something that I am not yet all that familiar with is securing donors and going through that path. And I believe you have a course coming up
I do. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
might cover some of that.
Yeah. I definitely love to cover some of that. I think that to answer your first question, so let me back up a couple of steps just to give a little more context. So my background is I technically have an events company where I do like big community events for like nonprofits and stuff, big night markets. I also do day of wedding coordination and
Oh,
smaller events like that.
fun.
So I ran our farmers market for 3 years and have done a lot of like big events. So
That's a big deal. That's a lot of
yeah,
responsibility.
during COVID, yeah, during a pandemic. So so I've just kind of taken my background, which has been community building, placemaking, tending to people with self-care tools in a group setting, rounding people up. I love a good round table discussion, a round table of like sort of the breaking bread, as it were, rounding people
Hmm.
up to connect and share and be together. And a lot of delight and surprise, a lot of self care tools. And so I've taken that background and married it with my own lived experience of being 37, being queer, trying to conceive unsuccessfully 14 times. Then my wife getting pregnant on her second IU. So we did 16 between the two of us. She got
Oh,
pregnant on her
wow.
second. After doing 14 is when I was told the three letters AMH. I wasn't even told what AMH was until then. And mine
What?
was 0.1. And so ultimately I should have never started in the first place, but didn't find that out until
Oh, that makes
the
me so
regist-
frustrated that they
Oh, me
didn't give you that
too. Yeah,
information.
me too. So
Oh,
registered nurse, naturopathic doctor, midwife, fertility doctor, all of that, and then ended up having to go to Seattle, 90 minutes away, to Seattle Reproductive Medicine, where they did a bunch of tests, and that's when I found out that my AMH was like so low that I never should have started the process in the first place. And our doctor said, like, we could do IVF, but like, I don't. You're gonna hate your life. That's a ton of hormones. I don't think it's gonna do anything. So basically, the end of your road is here. Sure, could I have kept going? Could I have been examined, like gone further and just tried? Yeah, but in our family, Tasha always knew. We always knew we'd have. We both have a uterus that is happily like wants to get pregnant. Both have
mm-hmm.
uteruses, and we just switched gears. We had that call in October 2020, and in 2021, Tasha happened to ovulate twice in February and got pregnant on the second IUI, medicated IUI, then in Seattle, and then we had Arlo
Okay.
in November 2021. So yeah, she's got eggs for days apparently, totally ready to go, whatever. So but then I became the non-bio parent, the non-gestational parent, like overnight, and we had our daughter like a few weeks before my 40th birthday, and now I
Happy
say
birthday, Mama.
yeah, I think now I say that I'm like in my perimenopause and preschool era. Arlo just turned 3 on Friday, and I'm about
I
to be
almost did a spit take. That's so funny. I'm perimenopausal myself,
yeah
but
in preschool. Very
perimenopausal in
good.
preschool.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah. And so yes, I'm almost 43. Have a kiddo in preschool. And so I think I just came to a point where, it came by way of me examining like who I am now in my life, really feeling like a sort of homecoming into my like matriarch, my crone, my perimenopause, my second half of my life kind of elder moment, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt like there's a lot of examining that's been happening around that for me personally and thinking about like, okay, what do I want to do with my life now outside of being also a full-time parent?
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a course that was for 6 months for creatives to either become coaches or create different programs or create offerings and sort of just inside that container have a lot of coaching support and create something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I had been doing for most of this last year. And when I got into it, I was thought, well, yeah, obviously it would have something to do around like delight surprise events, maybe some sort of subscription around dinner parties or something like that. And my coach was like, no, tell me more about who you are. And I started talking about
Yeah.
my lived experience of, being a non-bio parent. and everything that I just said. And she's like, no, I think that's it. Like, that's where people are really going to lean in. And there's ways in which I have been able to, and I like prioritize doing that in a creative way. And so now at this point, like an offering, I'm going to be doing like a 12 days of Christmas promotions in
Oh,
December to like lay out some of my offerings. This is a fun way to
yeah.
be able to do that. One of which is the sort of how to get started, like a pre-recorded webinar that will give
Mm-hmm.
folks like, okay, these are sort of like the nuts and bolts of like, start tracking your menstruation. Do you like, most of us are walking around not having any idea what our bodies are doing, right?
Yes.
I didn't even touch or see my cervix until I was 37. I didn't even know that I could touch my cervix until I was 37.
Right?
And I was looking at that thing constantly. And so just to say, like, just spend some time getting to know what your body is doing. And then sort of some of the other nuts and bolts, like breaking down all of these acronyms, like just like
There's
understanding the
so
language.
many.
There's so many. So
And some of them
understanding,
overlap, like
totally.
HCG and HSG, which
Yeah.
you guys are probably not dealing with too many HSGs,
I've had an
but still.
HSG. Oh, yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
God, was that the worst thing?
Yeah. It wasn't fun, mostly because the very heteronormative, very old school, very dated male fertility doctor we were using kept referring to the speculum as a torture device the whole time he was doing it. So that's the part that
Oh,
like didn't
oh
make
my
that fun.
gosh.
Otherwise
I
it's
have
pretty
like,
scary.
Morgan, I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
I could
My,
go on. Yeah.
but it wasn't that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an actual procedure. If he just didn't say anything, I was like kind of in and out. Wasn't a big deal. But for me anyways, I have friends who have done it too that thought it was brutal for them.
Yeah, one of the things
But
that I not recommend, but I let clients know that when they're going through some of those like tests and procedures and things that are, we're going to go with not quite comfortable,
yeah.
you can ask for a Valium,
Oh,
right?
nice. Yeah.
It's not necessarily like, it's not going to help with the pain, but like your muscles aren't as like tight because it's
Yeah.
not pleasant, right? And
Yeah.
so it can
Quiets your brain a
ease
little.
things.
Yeah.
Oh my
Totally.
goodness.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that you mentioned that I really liked is you knew when it was time to switch gears, right? And I think that's so important because in both of our worlds, right, whether it's queer family planning or infertility, it's expensive for one, but
Hmm.
two, it takes like such a physical and emotional toll going through all of this.
Yeah.
And so I like to, when I'm working with clients, like find in the beginning, like, let's talk about where we want our limits to be so that we're not in the thick of it trying to decide it, because then it's like, well, we just go on forever.
Right. And in reality, like when we went to Seattle, that was, maybe not, I mean, I don't even know if we probably did. I mean, some of this is on like a fog, but,
Oh,
we
absolutely.
definitely planned on doing more than we had done at that point. And it wasn't until like the only reason we went to Seattle is because we literally exhausted all of our options where we live. Like
Hmm.
we literally went to all of the places we could have gone where we live. So we had to go to Seattle. There are two big clinics there. We chose SRM for whatever reason. And it was because of that consult. It was because of that testing that made us switch gears. It wasn't like I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Let's switch gears. It was because I was
Yeah.
being told like, you really should just switch gears here. And
Yes.
so it was
Well, but
because
even with the IVF, you knew that that was not what was in your journey,
I
right? That
didn't have
was
it
not
in
what
me.
was in for you.
Yeah, I didn't
And
have it in me at that point.
I think it's wonderful that you knew that, right?
Hmm.
And didn't like, well, I'm just going to push myself and I'm going to, because it is hard, right? And you
Yeah.
have to really want to do it.
Yeah. Well, and you really have to like, I mean, IVF is such a big, heavy lift and word for a lot of folks. And I think well, there's lots of reasons, but one
Yes.
reason that people start with at-home IUIs, natural IUIs like we did, or doing ICIs at home is because like IVF does feel so out of reach and so scary and so expensive right out
Yeah.
the gate. And most of us can't just flip a coin, like handle that kind of financial expenditure right out the
Yeah.
gate. Like, look, we still spent over 20 grand in total. We still spent
Yes.
a ton of insane amount of money, but right out the gate, we're like, because I'm not infertile, because
Hmm.
this, like, we should be able to get pregnant on a few natural IUIs or even medicated IUIs. But it was that lack of other information at the start that like sent us down a
Yes.
path
That
that
you should have had.
that we shouldn't have been down and really had to piecemeal most of this together because of the lack of resources and support. And so that's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But I want to circle back to the thing you just said too, to kind of close the
Yeah,
circle of what you're
I
saying.
love it.
Is that part of what I'm doing with that sort of how to get started webinar? It is, like I said, the nuts and the bolts. It does include a little bit about like sperm bank or known donor stuff. It includes like some tracking if you wanted to track on your own or use ovulation kits, whatever. But it also then it works its way into more than like giving folks permission. Both I do a lot of giving, like a lot of acknowledging around the difference between being the bio and the non-bio or gestational
I have
non-gestational
seen
parent,
that, and I really like how you
because
talk
it's
about
really
stuff.
important, because like surely the person who's going to be getting pregnant is going to have the most attention put on them, obviously, but the other parent, it's still their journey too, and there might be times when
Mm-hmm.
folks are like, what is my role here? What do I do in the process of my family getting pregnant and having kids? But like, who will I be once they get here? And some
Yeah.
people I've talked to, they're like, no, I never question that, like, at all. I will be their parent, period. And others are like, am I going to feel like the nanny? Am I going to feel like a caregiver? Are we going to have a connection at all? Are
Oh.
we going to have anything in common at all if I didn't carry them in my body? So those two things definitely come up. So I really acknowledge both or all parents involved in the building of their family. And then that leads more into like, surely I did that on purpose because surely we can continue talking about like, because presumably this is an online webinar, so I can
Mm-hmm.
and I'm available to folks anywhere. And then you go to like where you live compared to where I live, probably totally different experiences. From Washington State to Ohio, two very different experiences. So in terms of like
Why
me
did
saying like
why did
go,
I think you were in Washington?
I was using that as an example, just
Oh.
from like the town you live in.
Oh, not me. Not
Yeah,
me as in
yeah.
folks, we're
I was
both
using
in
two different
Washington.
examples. Yeah,
This is a different you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're here. We're having it's
Yeah.
good. It's good.
Yeah. So that's a thing too. So in terms of me going, okay, go see this person, go to this place, go talk to this person, go to this place, like that's not always relevant. But what
Mm-hmm.
I can do is give them the base layer of like, this
Yes.
is how to get started, because the biggest thing for us and for most folks is I don't know what I don't know, and that's scary and stressful enough, and maybe holds off them starting at
Exactly.
all. The stress of not knowing where to start, what to do, how it works. And then the layer for us is like, where am I going to feel safe, heard, seen? Where am I going to
That's a
like
big one.
be acknowledged authentically? And that's that other piece. And so then that webinar is more than to move into what I feel like is more of my superpower, is helping people prioritize how they want this process to feel,
Mm-hmm.
curating their journey,
Yes.
building a root cellar, as it were, to stuff full of tools that they can use. Because I think too, like if I said to you right now, like, okay, you want to get pregnant and like you're going to venture down, you haven't started anything, you haven't done anything. If I say to you, like, if I start talking about in 6 months from now, this is going to suck so bad. You maybe have just done your 18th IUI. You've done another 2 week, you're on another 2 week wait. You're totally burnt out. You're totally isolated. You totally feel alone. Your family's being weird. Like you're just done. You're not finding joy in your life. You and your partner are fighting constantly. You're not going to have any sense of what that's like now,
Yeah.
right? But I know the potential. I mean, I'm being
Yes.
dramatic in my example, but the potential is there. And so, like, building a root cellar at the beginning helps you fill it full of things that you can't really conceptualize right now, but you know
Mm-hmm.
they're there if and when you need them to be. And so, my
Yes.
job is like in the tending is to like help people stuff that cellar so that they have struts under themselves when they get to a point where even something like, they're going to see a new doctor and they're super stressed out about it. And they're super stressed out if they're going to be authentic, and they're super going to be stressed out about, just getting there. So like tools of like sandwiching the appointment, like, and sometimes even just drive to the office, find out what their parking's like, walk into the reception, ask questions,
Yeah.
look around, find out where the bathroom is, whatever. So you're not doing all of that the day of your appointment. So like simple
Yes.
things. And then like plan, like find a new lunch spot afterwards, or have like a friend date on the calendar that night, or
I
like
love that.
spend some time brain dumping in your journal afterwards. Like, so like that kind of stuff, like that tending to that, honoring, celebrating, and creating, like having space for joy and celebration, in a time that's like this momentous time in one's life, and especially for queer folks who are often asked to like not be seen or heard or exist at all, right?
Yeah.
Part of that initial step is just helping folks understand and embody the reality that they deserve this type of tending to. They deserve to be
Yes.
parents like everybody else, and they
I
deserve to have
love
a
that.
team that loves them and like wants, like, their team is there to fully see them and help them get pregnant. That's their job, and to embrace their family and whatever uniqueness their family, comes with. So that's what
Hmm.
more of what, like, I love about like what I'm growing, and like I feel like is more of my superpower, is let's like having folks have someone who will walk alongside them and witness this, someone who knows what this process feels like and can sort of be like their elder, their guide, their support system. And even if you have friends and family who love you when you get pregnant, they don't understand what the
It's not
process
the
is of
same.
being queer and going through it. And so you want someone who like gets who you are in the world to some degree, having the shared experience of being a queer person, and then also having gone through the process of trying to conceive and knowing how brutal to equate feels, for
Yes. I
example.
love your Advent, your 2-week wait
Yeah.
Advent calendar that I
Yes.
saw. That
Yes.
was so clever, and
Thanks.
I got a real kick out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the very first thing I said to my coach when I started that program, was like, I want to make an advent calendar. And eventually I hope to make like a physical one. But in the meantime, yeah, I've had a digital one coded out, and has 2 weeks of something fun or distracting to
Mhm.
do, including like one of Arlo's favorite bathtub recipes, or like movie night, or like find a new cafe together. So it's like, and it's stuff is a wild card for each parent. Like it's,
Yeah.
so like one gets to choose one time and the other gets to choose another time or whatever. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things that I've created so far, for sure.
Yeah, it's super cool, and I think especially right now it's very timely because we don't currently. I had an Advent calendar, when I was growing up, and I don't
Yeah.
have one now. And I just saw it. I was like, "That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
I'll
so
just
fun."
send you
I
one.
have to talk to her.
I'll send you one. You can have one for
Yes,
Christmas, whatever.
please.
Just use up your own self-care.
Oh, can always use more of that.
True.
Right. And so I want to talk about your name, and on here your Twitter, your Instagram handle, I am Mamo.
Yeah.
What is that?
Mama was what my daughter calls me. That's my parent name.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mamo. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So that's what she calls me. I am Mama, and my wife Tasha is Baba. And I added MHK just for Morgan Henry Kerr, because surprisingly, I am Mamo does exist when picking out a username. So I just added
That's
the
so
Morgan
funny.
Henry Kerr to the end. Yeah. But yeah,
Oh, I
Mamo
love
is
it.
my parent name, and it just felt fitting that that's what I would call, yeah, this work.
Yeah, I think it's really, from what I've seen and what I've experienced in people that I've spoken with that kind of live in this realm of let's help people get pregnant, have babies. So much of this work is influenced by lived experience,
Yeah.
right? But also, our families, our kids. Like my website is like a bright orange because that's my daughter's favorite color right now, right?
Yeah.
Orange was never my jam, right? You would, if you were to be like, Audra, what is your website? Green. Everything. I'm a cartoon character. Here's my green cup. Here's my
Yeah.
green sweatshirt. Like
Yeah.
green is my jam. But as I like watch her and she, navigates towards that, I'm like, oh, okay, it has to be orange, right? That's what
Hmm.
it's got to be. And, wanting more for people than what I experienced, right? And one of the things that you mentioned about your, I think, 12 days of Christmas and some of the stuff you're putting together. You
Hmm.
mentioned really wanting to focus on the non-gestational partner
Hmm.
and where they fill in that role. And what I found really interesting is all the things you were talking about could apply to my husband.
Hmm.
Like, he had those questions and he had those doubts, right? And I think, well, really most of what you've said, like, Yeah, I know you like mostly focus on like how to help queer families like navigate, but I think you'd be
Mhm.
great in the world of infertility. That's just a total aside. Like
I've been told that before, yeah.
because wanting to advocate, wanting to support, right? You know, you're talking about the root cellar. I was
Yeah.
raised by an Eagle Scout. Always be prepared, right?
Right.
And so
Prepared.
that is how I like, I mean, approach everything, but also I want, you know, people trying to navigate fertility clinics to be prepared on what to expect, but also like when it's time to switch providers
Mhm.
if they are not right, if they're calling things torture devices, or if they're not making you feel heard or seen or like validating very real concerns.
Yeah.
um okay, we unpaused because Audra Smith, fertility coach, is not Audra Smith, technology wizard, but we're working on it, right? Um, so we've talked a little bit about, you know, your work as a TTC doula, but and you've mentioned that you have a lot of cool resources and programs. If someone were going to work with you, if someone was like, ah, Morgan's awesome, I want that support, where would they start? What do you got?
Yeah. So I think the best way to reach out is by Instagram. That's where really everything that I'm doing lives at this stage. All of my offerings are in the link of my bio, and I use Stan Store as a storefront to home all of my offerings. And so I think, yeah, just to reach out and DM me. And I always, I'm happy to offer like just like a free chat just to say like, hey, what are you guys up to? And what are you needing? And like, are we a good fit? Um, and then from there, like I have, a handful of various like free resources, and then more like if you wanted to do more one-on-one consulting, like I certainly sometimes people just be like, okay, let's just talk this out. What do we do
Hmm.
first? And like what, like let's just start by like talking out and sort of like diffusing some of the mystery, diffusing some of the stress of the unknown.
Yes.
But certainly like those consultations can be scheduled as a pack or ongoing, based on what folks are needing. And again, some folks don't know what they're going to need or feel like they don't need anything until they really get into it. And
Yes.
so, like I offer like a pack of 3 that you can use over 6 months. So if you're like, let's do one to like create a plan, and then we'll circle back to you when we need you again, in 3 months or whatever from now.
Yeah.
So I really am like intentional about curating this stuff around what folks are needing. Like certainly, like for example, that mini course is for birth workers, but it's very obviously and specifically for folks that are birth workers. But in terms of like the other like consulting, and even like the reason why that how to get started webinar isn't just like a kind of a fertility 101 webinar is because
Hmm.
like I really want to tailor these experiences to individual folks and not just like put a cookie cutter of stuff on people, because obviously we're all so incredibly different, and our experiences
Yes.
are nuanced, and our ideas and dreams around getting pregnant are nuanced and different. And so it's important to me to like meet people where they're at, and then from there, once I can determine what their needs are, can then we together curate what the next steps are based on what I'm offering. And so that's like the best first step is just like getting in touch with you by DMs. We can chat about where you're at, and then just go like, yeah, what seems like a good next step? Like, what are you actually needing next? What seems like the most like empowering and useful things that can happen next? Because I want to help folks make their process more efficient, which that efficiency is mostly going to come from just knowing anything versus nothing, right?
Hmm.
Having any amount of information and resources to make those first steps in a way that feels really good to them.
Yes,
And
and
then
that's
like really
important.
honoring what they're doing, and like holding that space and tending to them along the way with either the tools that I have, which are more of a digital product that they can do on their own, or through that one-on-one consulting. And then my bigger trajectory in the new year is to start doing half day retreats.
Oh, I
that I'll
love
do
that.
regionally. So I have, 3 locations in Bellingham that I have to choose from, and then 1 location in Tacoma that I have as an option so far. But I'm hoping to do them on a pretty regular basis, doing like really just great half-day retreats that are like not so much about the nuts and bolts of fertility, but are more about just like getting self-care and anchoring, visioning,
Mhm.
celebrating, receiving, like just high touch, high customized, really just juicy and fun and sweet and like being in community. So like that's my trajectory for 2025. But right now I feel like my stand store is a root cellar that I'm stocking that other people can walk into and go like, okay, I need this and I'm
Mhm.
gonna need this and yeah, I'll call you later. Okay, and then you know what I mean? Can kind of just walk
Yeah.
in and pick out what they need and leave kind of thing. So yeah.
No, I love that. Like I said, you've talked about being prepared for what possibilities may come down the line,
Yeah.
you know?
And not just
Well,
like
so
kind of like going hard, just like going hard on this with like no struts, no anchoring, no tethering. It's just like you're out here kind of in like a no man's land trying to
mhm.
figure out how to do like the most important thing you maybe will ever do in your life. And
Yes.
doing it alone. Like
Yes.
no one should have to do that alone. Yeah.
Yes. And now, so you've mentioned a few different, right? So you've mentioned IUI, you've mentioned at home IUI.
Hmm.
Do you kind of specialize with helping and walking folks through any like particular avenue? And kind of as a side to that question, um, is your focus primarily women trying to grow their families, men trying to grow their families? We're just trying to grow queer families in
Yeah.
general.
Anyone with a uterus can grow a person in their, can
This
grow
is
up in their
true.
body. Yeah. So, no, I think that um, it's more about like guiding folks through like, okay, like how would I even do an IUI at home? Could I do an IUI at home? Maybe they've talked to a sperm bank, but they still have questions. So I'm like there for like residual questions, um, and to help kind of facilitate the stress of those questions and like what to do first, how it could work. Again, diffusing the mystery, but in terms of like finding them someone to do an IUI or like um advocating in the inside parts of like the fertility work.
Mm-hmm.
I would live probably like a ring outside of that spectrum of the trying to conceive process. But like teaching people how to that they can track their ovulation on their own, like they can use body basal temperature, they can check their mucus and like do all these other things. And
Mm-hmm.
that alone is like enlightening that you can actually
It's
have agency over your
so,
own body.
yes.
So that is certainly information I have, like having a chart that you can use. Like I have a resource fact sheet that you can use with resources like a chart that's been made by a queer midwife, to track your ovulation if you want to. So stuff more like that. Does that answer your
I love
question?
that. Yeah, it sounds like where your real passion is, and you mentioned this before, community building, right? You
Mhm.
want to help make sure that people's hearts are protected, that their goals, that their like dreams of becoming parents are kept in focus and
Yeah.
protected through this process, because it does. I mean, trying to make babies with any kind of barrier is a lot
Yeah.
and is unfair, right?
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such a wonderful and important resource that exists. So I love that
Yeah.
you are doing this.
Thanks.
Kind of out of left field, I saw a video where you're putting your face in ice water and you have like little ice cubes.
Yeah.
You gotta tell me about this. What
Well,
are
it's
we
just
doing?
something that I do as part of my most mornings ritual. Is it's mostly
Yeah,
just
getting up early before 6 a.m. I saw that
well,
video.
yeah. Well, the thing is that like kind of the way that our schedule's been shaking out is that like, Arlo just goes to preschool 2 half days a week, so she's mostly with me. And so to allow for myself to have any time alone and to like
Yeah.
be uninterrupted, that means yeah, I'm getting up, between 5:30 and 6, and so then I get until 9 a.m. Whereas like, and Arlo's currently sleeping with us again, so Tasha and Arlo get up and do their thing, but I get until 9. Once she's up, it's like mostly uninterrupted.
Yeah.
So I'm just in my kitchen. And then that means then if Tasha wants time to herself, then she, is up to like 12 or 1 to have for time to her alone. So that's just kind of the way that's shaken out. Otherwise, we have some childcare on Thursdays. So like basically Thursdays I get from like 7 to 4:30 all day, but to do whatever I want, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I just like I've never sustained outside of making my daughter and like the first time I ever did a triathlon in 2014. I've never sustained this type of energy in anything I've done ever, and
Wow.
especially in terms of my work life. And so I'm
Uh-huh.
really dedicated to it. And so I'm really making sure that I have the time and space that I need and want to do it really well and to curate offerings that I feel really good about and to do a lot of like connecting like with folks like you and like other birth workers and like people in the birthing space that are becoming my team around me as well,
Yeah.
that are like really can be like readily available resources. Like that's one of the first things that I did when I came back to Bellingham from Oakland in 2015 is I just got in front of as many people as I possibly could that I thought were doing anything cool here,
Mm-hmm.
so that they had my name in their mouth as quickly as possible. And so that I could hit the ground running doing the kinds of things that I wanted to do. And I think the trajectory of what I've been doing in this year is similar to that. And that like I'm seeking out people that I want to collaborate with or work with or have as referrals for people I'm working with. And so that I have quickly like readily available resources for them, people that I know would be a good fit on that are inclusive and that are an ally, but also just building a team around myself because like mostly I'm creating in isolation. And as a creative who's used to having people like put 6-story balloon installations down parking garages, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to create in isolation by myself and then not know when anyone's actually going to be experiencing what I've made or have that feedback. So
I feel that so deeply in my
yeah.
bones,
Yeah.
Morgan.
So it's really important that I've like built people around me that feel like part of my team. Even though they're not specifically a part of my business, they're very much a part of my community and my team,
Yeah.
and have like the support system around what I'm doing. So it's been a lot of building in that way. And then like the things that have come up more recently are that do an in-person circle here in Bellingham on Wednesdays. This course that I'm building now just came by way from talking to other doulas or other birth workers that are like, there are so many people who have no idea what it's like to try to conceive as a queer person, and how isolating and alienating is it to know once you've gotten to a labor doula or a postpartum doula as a queer person and them not have any idea where you just came from in terms of your experience, or have no idea
Hmm.
that you may have to embark on a second parent adoption process with your kid. That just shouldn't be happening in
Yeah.
2024. And so
Yeah.
it really came by way, like I never planned on doing any coursework or education to other birth workers in particular, but I've found that that's been a huge feedback, and
Yeah.
I'm mostly just using my own lived experience then to help educate not just other queer families on how to get pregnant, but how to educate other birth workers and supporting them as well.
I think it
So
really
that's a
is such a
resource standpoint.
valuable resource, right? Like, I mean, I've got several good friends that we have joked, right, that they took a turkey baster and their
Yeah,
fireball of choice, and now they have beautiful babies and they have
yeah,
families. But like even with all of that, right, I still don't know like how to go through like and help people secure donors or some of
mhm,
the that aspect and all of it. And so like I think that course that you're building is such a wonderful resource for everyone, right,
yeah.
for all birth workers and fertility workers. So I think it's a really awesome thing that you're building. And
Thanks.
I'm hoping that it won't just be like the course. I'm hoping we can buy it later so
Yeah.
that way I can nab it.
Yeah,
And
you can have it. So the reason why, so can I, I don't want to
yes, no,
jump in
you
on your
go.
timeline, but the reason
Love
why
it.
I'm pushing it now is so, and I decided to do this because I felt like it was like a unique way to add more to the conversation. Really
Hmm.
what it's around is like birth workers like really stepping into their allyship and having inclusive language that actually embraces all families, not just
Yes.
saying just mom, not dad, like not assigning gender to everything, like not being very like hyper feminine focused or whatever it is, really embracing each family as they are. And so a lot of it is like breaking down, like not only like, how to use pronouns in your paperwork, but it's like, how do you tell us, if when we're searching for doula support, how do you tell us that you are in fact safe, that you are in fact
Yeah.
inclusive, that you do in fact care about the obstacles that we face as queer folks trying to conceive, and really in the world in general, because right now clearly there's a lot of hate
Yeah.
facing us, and there's a lot of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. There's a lot of things that make us feel really unsafe on a day-to-day basis, and that stuff doesn't just stop at the door when we decide to have kids and walk through that door. That all is coming with
Probably
us.
makes it more scary.
Makes it way more scary, and there's a lot of medical trauma potentially. There's a lot of stuff that's not been unpacked. There's a lot of like wondering, like, and just the emotional labor of constantly having to tell your doctor again what your pronoun is, or tell them
Yeah.
again this thing or that thing.
Just feel
And so
seen
yeah, just
and
for feel seen.
validated as a person.
Right. And there's still a lot of that missing. And so that's a big part of the course, is just to help birth workers really better understand that. Because if you ask any queer person on the planet who has had kids or want to have kids, they'll say that's one of the biggest things, that's like the not know what I don't know, and the unseen stress is like not knowing where to go. There's so much emotional labor and trying to
Yes.
find resources that would be a good fit for you, and that would be safe and have inclusive language, and that you would really feel seen. And it's a lot of times impossible to know that from the outside, or it's really clear that just sort of like what happens around Pride, every corporation on the planet also tokenizes queer folks to like,
Yes.
for
Gotta
sale.
love a good rainbow.
Right. And
And
so
I
it's
do love
like,
a good rainbow, but I
yeah,
I like it when it feels authentic and
yeah,
not just in a
right.
month.
Just a token of like, yeah, like a trap. And so it's more about like, yeah, how to actually really, really step into your allyship. And there's no better time than now in our world,
Yes.
in your timeline, to be that kind of beacon for queer families who are pregnant and about to go into labor, or in that postpartum support in particular, like so insanely important. And again, like when most of us are told that you don't deserve to receive any kind of tending to, it's hard then to, again, there's like this extra layer of being skeptical that you're going to actually be able to let go like that, like be able to receive, because you're hyper vigilant all of the
Absolutely.
time.
It's traumatic, and
Yeah, super
when
traumatic.
it's probably hard to come up and build those relationships without like initially having those walls, and like you talked
Right,
about, that emotional labor, like
right,
not knowing who is a safe person or what is a
right,
safe space. Like that's
right,
just got to be mega exhausting, on top of the exhaustion of trying to have a baby and growing a baby and then
right,
having a tiny baby who doesn't sleep.
right. Exactly. All of that on top of it. Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah. So I decided to do a pre-sale for my course that is live and ready to go. Anyone can buy it. And what that pre-sale offers, though, is an additional layer of, I've created like an allyship kit that is included. So when you buy the pre-sale, you get the allyship kit. You also get a badge
Ooh.
that I've created that is kind of, it's not like the sticker stamp or the rainbow stamp. It's like it's a saying that, like, because you've completed this course, you can say you're an ally of LGBTQAI plus community. But the other
Mhm.
thing that's, I think, the most important piece is a free live Q&A with myself, to both ask me whatever questions you want about my own experience, but more to talk about, like, if you want to talk more about the allyship kit, or if you want to talk about the things that you want to learn the most inside the course, because the
Mhm.
framework of the course is built out, but I've left a lot of space inside of it for that type of feedback. If folks are like, these are
Yeah.
the specific things I feel like I don't know, um, if they aren't already kind of in the language of what I've created, then I can add them in. So like that's pretty unique, to be able to actually give your feedback to a course before you've purchased it, but like before you get it,
Yeah.
your feedback and input is there. So when you receive it, you know that you're going to be learning the things that you wanted to learn. And then it will go live officially on December 1st, for sale. So you also save $100 when you buy it in the pre-sale. So I did that kind of on purpose because then I think the people that come into the Q&A space then also can kick off their own kind of network with each other
Yeah.
to continue learning together and like be sort of a pod of like people who are really committed to like doing this work and learning and understanding. And I think that's the biggest thing is just like your willingness to like be educated and understand these obstacles is like the biggest thing. So I did that sort of uniquely instead of just being like, here's a course, buy it. Like I added some
Yeah.
pre-sale features just to kind of have more conversation around it. And then when it goes into December, then it'll be $497 at that point, and anyone can again buy it. But I thought the pre-sale feature was kind of fun to do.
That's very fun to do.
Yeah.
I like that aspect. That's a very cool, like, you still have time to kind of tweak it, but by being in that like pre-sale, that Q&A, like you said, you get to kind of say, hey, this is what I really want to learn about.
Yeah.
So like, teach me.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
very, very cool.
Thanks.
Well, cool. I mean, I think you're awesome. I'm really glad that
Thanks.
we got to like chat, and I'm gonna link all of your stuff when I like post everything.
Cool.
Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Um, I don't think so. Yeah, I think just in general, like cheers to like all parents like doing the thing. Like this is not
Yes.
for the weak of heart, the faint of heart, or whatever the term is. Like parenting is really hard and also the most beautiful and amazing thing ever. And I think that all birthing folks, especially, are just not given enough honor and credit for what they've done and who they are. So my job is to make sure queer folks get as much attention and honor and celebration as everyone else, and that they feel is super supported and seen and heard and celebrated along the way. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, feel free to do so via Instagram, DM me, follow me. Like I have lots of resources and lots of stuff that there to share. So definitely check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of Catching Up with Conception with me, Audra Smith, fertility coach. I want to thank you for joining us and ask you to subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you're listening on. It may seem small, but it really does make a big impact. Catch me on Instagram and TikTok at Fertility Coach Audra and on our next episode of Catching Up with Conception.